enormous in this country. It doesn't take much to beat workers if you can fire them without penalty, as so many can. And this is a situation where when the employer is not directly opposing, you have a much better chance of getting in. Statistics show that when the employer opposes, union wins only 46% of the time. And that's because one out of every 3 union campaigns, a worker gets fired. In 90% of union campaigns, there's a one-on-one meeting between a supervisor and a worker in which a worker feels quite intimidated when his boss starts asking him about how many days he's been absent from work. And, oh, by the way, how do you feel about that union? Whereas when the employer doesn't oppose, 78% of the time, the union wins. Now that's a situation technically you're in here now. It's still up in the air if the UAW can win that. They haven't gotten across the finish line yet. Things are looking optimistic. The UAW feels optimistic. But Volkswagen, the typical tactic of union busters that they do all the time, and I've seen it in every campaign, is run out the clock. If folks are going to do something risky like organize a union, go down to a union hall after work, come to events like Byron is doing, speak out, that's a great deal of time. That's a great deal of time that they're not getting paid for. It's a great deal of risk. It's a great deal of stress. It's a great deal of making enemies, too. As many workers have told me, neighbors and friends have come up and complained to them about the situation. So what Volkswagen is doing by not agreeing is allowing a time window to open in which folks can be intimidated to change their votes. And now Volkswagen has been linked to 2 of these companies doing it. They've given $5,000 to this group called the Competitive Enterprise Institute, which Matt Patterson worked for, and he claimed over the summer he only had a budget of $4,000. Now I talked to Volkswagen, and Volkswagen told me that they weren't giving the money to the Competitive Enterprise Institute for his anti-UAW work. That was just a coincidence. They were going to a Rand Paul dinner, and maybe that's the truth. And then I found out that they're giving money to this group, giving a lot of money to this group called the Chattanooga Regional Manufacturers Association. And the Chattanooga Regional Manufacturers Association, one of the things they advertise to their members is a thing called union avoidance seminars. And there's this whole industry that many in the union industry know about called union avoidance seminars. And what they do is they train managers in how to counter unions before they even get out of the gate. And if you go on LinkedIn and you look at a lot of HR managers' resumes, a lot of them will have on their resumes that they attended places like General Electric's union avoidance seminars, because General Electric has the reputation of running the best union avoidance seminars in the country. And this is a whole industry. If you look at one of the people that's been the most outspoken, and in some ways in the past involved with the Chattanooga Regional Manufacturers Association, and still has a lot of friends there, Don Jackson, who's the president of manufacturing in Chattanooga, at the facility for Volkswagen up until a year ago. Don Jackson and all the managers he hired come out of Toyota, they come out of Nissan, they come out of other southern transplants, where their entire career they have been trained in how to avoid unions and crush union drives before they get off the ground. And I've heard stories from many workers out there, anecdotal, that many of these managers, even though Volkswagen says publicly that they're not going to do a big thing, are sort of casually saying they're against the union. And certainly before there was a union drive, they were taking steps to avoid it. Before they stated public neutrality. Because that's just the playbook. That's the playbook they go by. So maybe Volkswagen is pumping in this money. Who knows? We do know Grover Norquist is spending money here. And we do know, from what I hear from the anti-union forces, that all the anti-union forces in the country see Chattanooga as the biggest fight going on right now, as the Wisconsin of manufacturing. That's how important the union drive is at Volkswagen. It is a make-or-break moment for the UAW. If the UAW wins at Volkswagen, much like when the Union Army won in Chattanooga, it opens up the rest of the South to them. They realize this. Grover Norquist realizes this. Bob Hooker realizes this. And they don't want that to happen, as Michael's fond of saying. The biggest threat they see is the threat of a good example. Say 2,000 folks out there get a union. Wages go up from 15 bucks an hour to 18 bucks an hour. Pretty soon other places that are non-union in town are going to have to compete with them, have to raise their wages. Maybe what will happen is you've got 2,000 folks at Volkswagen that are unionized, and you've got a bunch of folks working in basically slave labor across the street at Amazon making 10, 11 bucks an hour, and they start becoming friends with the union guys across the street, and then they decide they want a union too. So they're scared. They're very scared. And they're willing to do anything to stop this. It's unclear who's doing it, and that's important. I'm not saying it's necessarily Volkswagen, but Volkswagen has been linked to several of the key players. And Volkswagen has not exactly been operating in good faith, to say the least. So it's not clear who's doing it, but it is clear why the general anti-union forces want it out. And so that's my presentation. And I want to open up to questions. I'm a reporter. I hate talking. I do it on television for a living, but I hate it. So I want to hear what folks have to say. Let's have a fun Q&A here. Let's talk. I want to hear about what's going on.